Industry Inner Join, uplifting data literacy across Australia and bringing conversations from data leaders straight to your ears. Get the insider information. My name is Douglas, former data analyst, now founder of DR Analytics Recruitment, and we're about to hear from one data leader. Industry Inner Join podcast, episode number 6 with Andy Maher, manager of data and digital.
Yeah, that's right.
At IGO.
Yep.
But mate, didn't start.
Might be the other way around, digital and data.
Digital and data.
Yeah.
Didn't start there.
No.
Started with advertising and signage in the sporting industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pallet Digital.
Yep.
Then a data analyst at Lottery West, analytics lead at WestTrack, and now where you are now. Let the people know. In 200 seconds, can you give us a walkthrough of how you are and what you're doing now?
I'll certainly try, because you've missed a few things in the middle there as well. So if we go way back, fresh out of high school, I was directionless, as many of us are. So I went to UWA and studied the best thing I could think of, which was law. Finished that degree, but in the last couple of years when it starts getting really serious and everyone's taking their calls about clerkships and vacation work, I saw how stressed everybody was, and I was like, I want no part of this. Plus you hear things about the industry. So I went from there into a retail job, doing some like coaching around how to use computers. And then from there, I sort of found myself in this bizarre situation where I had a friend who did the painting business, and it ended up being this weird situation where he ran into a newspaper article about this architect couple who were about to renovate a floor of a building, like a heritage building in the city called Moana Chambers. And he didn't have any project management experience at the time. So we sort of got together and had this crazy idea to do the signage. And that's like literally painting signs on grass for sporting events. So we worked at the AFL, we worked at global cricket events, rugby events. But yeah, we had this idea to help those architects build out this project. So what it ended up becoming was a cafe who my girlfriend at the time had over 15 years of hospitality experience. So she took on the cafe. She's now my wife, by the way. So yeah, not like a former. We set up an art gallery in there, which was run by artists in residence. And then there were creative offices out the back. So we ran that for probably about 6 years as a couple of different small businesses. But off the back of that, I was keen to have a salary, to be honest, because doing the self-employment thing didn't really work for me in terms of projecting forward what that is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. So ended up doing a contract job with Lottery West as a field technician to go and install a bunch of IT gear in news agencies around WA. They liked me, so I came back and did some cover as a field technician for about 2 years, and then moved roles a couple of times internally there. So did some project management stuff, and eventually sat down with somebody who has gone on to become one of my really good friends, and he introduced me to the world of analytics. And I had never heard of this job at the time. When he explained it to me, it's like a light bulb went off, because it was all these things that I liked and I thought I was good at. So the big problem solving of complex issues was what I loved about my law degree. I used to build websites as a teenager or a younger kid, so that was the programming element, and then just the communication and talking to people in the business. I've always kind of seen myself as a bit of a sponge, like soaking up all that domain knowledge wherever I go. So I got into that, joined the analytics team at Lottery West, and they were in the middle of doing like an agile working implementation there as well. So I got into that as a Scrum Master and did that for a while, but I was never able to find like a permanent home for myself just because of the way that government contracts and the like often work, as I'm sure you know. So I took a role at WestTrack, originally in a team that was actually called the AI team at the time. And this was back in 2021 before Gen AI, as we know it now, was really on the radar. So a week after I joined, everything changed there. There was a restructure. I found myself in a business role. So I got a lot of exposure to some of the challenges of trying to do data and analytics from the business side. And so when I eventually joined and ended up leading the analytics team at WestTrack, I feel like I had a really good understanding of what the challenges were for business users. I had a lot of empathy for trying to get something done and feeling like you're being blocked by IT. But of course, I was then also familiar with the challenges from the IT side, not trying to be a blocker, but you've got your own constraints. So I think that's sort of the journey that I've been on. And I was at WestTrac for almost 5 years. And I was starting to feel like I was getting itchy feet, ready for the next step. And I wanted to really capitalize on the AI and innovation boom. So I was lucky enough to secure a role kind of leading that function at IGO. So that was definitely more than 200 seconds, but it's hard to capture all of that in less.
I like the overview, and I think the dots connect more looking back. You probably understand the OT from actually installing IT gear to then doing the analytics.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the challenges from business, the actual business problem to the data analytics team. Can you walk through those a little bit and what you see?
Yeah, so I think as a business user, no one knows more about the challenge that you're trying to solve than you do. So it can be really frustrating when you sit in a room with a data analyst or an IT manager or someone like that, and they come in with a closed mind or thinking they're going to tell you how to solve your problem. And I've seen that so many times. You often have really good insight into how a problem needs to be solved, but you just need to be enabled by IT or partner with IT to deliver that solution. So I think that was something that I really felt early in that business role at WestTrac. Was I had a really good list and understanding of some of the problems that we wanted to solve, but I didn't have access to the tools that I needed to solve them. So I just ended up in this kind of dance with the managers on the IT side, trying to articulate the value to the business of solving this problem, but not really feeling as though I was getting the support. And of course, if I put myself in their shoes, for me, my problem that needed solving was really important. It was 100% of what I wanted to do, but it's just an item on a list for an IT or a service delivery team who have 50 things they're being asked for, and they've got to try and prioritize that. So it's a really interesting and difficult thing to overcome, which is why you see a lot of tension, I think, between business and IT or business and data teams in the real world.
I hear that a lot across internal stakeholders and clients. For that consultant, for that data analyst that's interacting with the business, what are the steps for them to be on the same level with the business and meet their demands? How do you think people can learn and build that skill?
I think it's really important to listen. I think so many of us go into these conversations feeling like we're the smartest person in the room. And maybe sometimes that's true, but I think intelligence is relative, right? Like you might be really good at certain things, but you're never going to know more about that particular business problem or that subject matter than the SME from the business that is their everything. They deal with that data every day. So you got to go in with an open mind and ask questions, be prepared to listen, be humble. They're going to have so much experience to offer you. I remember in the first week, I think, at WestTrac, I got given this problem that needed solving around like forecasting demand to try and ease some supply chain issues for parts of a machine that could cost millions of dollars to order. And they've been trying to solve this problem for years. And I had to sit in a room with a stakeholder who had 30 years of experience in this field and try to tell them, I'm here to solve your problem. So that's not the right way to frame it. You've got to go in and say, what have you tried? Like, what have been the pain points? And you can shed light on specific elements that they won't be aware of, like maybe what some other teams are doing in this space, what the latest technology can bring to the table. Those are the kinds of things that an SME might not be exposed to. And so by talking through some of the art of the possible when you're dealing with digital tech, it can really set off some ideas in the heads of the SMEs which you can kind of unlock or enable in that way.
When I was working at a call center as a data analyst, sitting with the operations team for a few hours, that was mind-boggling. I was like, this is what you do.
Yeah, you get a really
data. I was like,
really unique insight into what they do day to day. And I think it's the other thing that's probably really useful to think about is solving the problem is not everything. sometimes it depends on user adoption as well. Like it's one of the things that, in my current role is everything is like value. When you're working in a constrained environment and in the economy that we're in, I think everybody is, you can't just focus on delivering the best solution, because what is best, like it's not objective. You've got data engineers who want to build the best state-of-the-art data platform. You've got cybersecurity engineers who want to build an impenetrable fortress. But at the end of the day, what you are doing needs to align with the strategy of the business, because none of us exist in a vacuum. We're not building a data platform for the sake of building a data platform. It's got to be in service of the core function of a business, which is the thing that makes money. So I think having that in mind as well, like it feels like a bit of a commercial way to view things, but at the end of the day, that is the value that you bring. No one employs a data and analytics function because they're fun to have around. But yeah, I think that relentless pursuit of value, it has so many elements to it, and one of the big ones is adoption as well. So you can deliver the best solution in the world, the best dashboard in the world, but if it's not used to make decisions which directly impact the business's bottom line, then the money that you invested in it is a write-off, essentially.
Yeah. What comes to mind is the 2025 MIT report of the state of AI.
Yeah, people love that one.
Yeah, and it was said the main barrier to AI adoption, it was something like only 5% of businesses that had introduced AI, only 5% were hitting the P&L hitting the P&L for value.
Yeah.
But the main barrier wasn't the technology, it was the adoption from the users.
Yeah. And I think there's so much in that, right? Like, yeah, the number 5% of pilots make it to production, but you got to think about what is the goal of some of these AI solutions. This is an absolute can of worms, but I think the general idea of generative AI solutions that businesses are kind of working with now is applications around making decisions faster. And what that ends up translating to is more efficient business processes, or people are doing in 4 hours what they used to do in 8. And I think there's an easy assumption to make that if somebody saves 4 hours of their time, that 4 hours will directly translate to the bottom line of the company. But that is an assumption. Like, it very well could be that people are spending 4 hours like booking their next Bali trip, or buying a new set of golf clubs. Like it's one of the questions I think we're forced to ask as people who are evaluating an AI solution and trying to work out what is the size of the opportunity, or what's the ROI on that. What's going to happen with that time saved? Like, you can use the phrase focus on value add or focus on growth or whatever, but if you can't articulate what will be done with the time that's saved, it's hard to understand. Well, it's hard to show on the balance sheet why that's a benefit.
A lot of things come to mind there. One is that a lot of what I hear from businesses of AI solutions, a lot of it's a 20 to 30% productivity increase.
Yep.
And where there is value is when there's one person doing the equivalent of 3 people's jobs.
Yep.
And they were under the pump.
Yeah.
They weren't getting to all their work, but now they can and do a little bit more.
Yeah. So about increasing throughput, which I think is a really good example.
Perfect. Like one person's needed instead of 3 people hired.
Yeah.
But if there was 3 people already in that role and then you introduced it, now you've got 3 people at 60% capacity.
Yeah.
Where was that? So I think it's like the extra Y, the level of Y there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Data platforms. Have you got any favorites, and are they even really needed in businesses? Because I'm hearing a bit of an argument for why not just run a on-premise SQL server. Be fine.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I know that there's been a bit of a shift in the industry away from these like monolithic cloud platforms. I do like them. The convenience of being able to log in and access your data and run workloads from a browser anywhere in the world is great. I love that convenience. Probably the short answer to do businesses need them is no, but they can be really nice. They're great enablers for scaling out certain use cases. I've worked with yeah, at least the two major cloud ones. Don't have a lot of experience with Fabric. So the two I've worked with are primarily Databricks and Snowflake. I wouldn't say that I have a favorite. I think they each have their strengths, but by and large, there's no one that sticks out as superior. I think it just comes down to the comfort level of the business or the users within that business, and really what you're trying to do as an organization with that platform. So, at the company I work for now, like we do have on-premise SQL servers, and the company's been getting by with that. You don't need a cloud data platform to successfully run an analytics function. But I think the thing that we're probably seeing now is with the advent of AI, which requires vastly more compute on large data sets than ever has before, being able to effectively outsource that compute to the major cloud providers is a big advantage. You don't need to run hundreds of servers in your data
You don't need
center
to own
or on-prem.
NVIDIA GPUs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one because everyone is doing some sort of AI right now. Of course, having said that, I'm sure you're reading it as well. The AI bubble's about to burst. What does that mean for all the various things we're doing?
But I oscillate between it's bursting versus it's booming.
Yeah.
And,
well, you and the market apparently, and every other person on the planet.
Yeah, I heard he'll come on the podcast next. That could be a teaser. But I had lunch with someone, and I said, is it boom or bust? What do you reckon? He said, where we're up to now is enough. Like, if we had no more advancements, we could just keep working with what we've got for the next 4 or 5 years, and we'd probably kick off some pretty amazing projects. The workforce would be changed. It's there already.
I wouldn't mind it too much if we just paused for a second, because one of the things I'm fascinated about, maybe even more than the technical possibilities with AI, is I guess what it means for both human and organizational psychology. Because I think this thing is running away from us a little bit, and we don't have the structures or guardrails in place to make sure that the people, which are the core of any organization, any community, are kept safe from this kind of technology. And I'm not talking about Skynet running off creating robots that shoot people. I'm talking more about the impacts that it can have on our health. You look at when the internet was becoming mainstream and social media popped up, the way that it created communities for people to find like-minded individuals, share opinions, they kind of turned into echo chambers, and we've seen the impact that that's had on politics, everything. It's dragged people to the extremes of everything. You can't just be someone who has no opinion on something. You've got to be at one end or the other. And that was just with social media. If you imagine now, someone having access to a large language model, which is an individualized echo chamber, it's trained to be plausible, not to be true, because truth is not objective. So someone's going to be dragged down this path of reinforcing the ideas and dragged even further to the extreme. And I think that we as a society don't know what to do with that. That's really challenging. So I think that there's got to be, I don't know if it's government regulation or something, some layer put in place to make sure that we are protected from ourselves.
It's a hard argument because the other side is those protective measures would cost us progress in that domain.
Absolutely.
And the internet's a good example of someone's gone, you guys, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Anyone can create a website. There's some legal laws to abide by, but by majority, do whatever you want.
And it's like ESG. Not every country is going to agree on those protections. So those who are less regulated will absolutely run away, and the market will suffer as a result.
Or they could have an expansion and have some new advancements that come along as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Data platforms before AI. So just on the AI stance, where you said you're saying it's got its huge benefits, maybe not full productivity. It comes back to the business ROI. Where are you seeing, whether publicly or in any other space of your life, where are you seeing where it has been tangibly this is a game changer? This has changed how I operate.
AI or data platforms?
AI.
I think it's undeniable that the core strength of AI is its ability to kind of quickly go out and search for and synthesize a lot of information. So I think for many people, and this includes myself, it has replaced Google in some ways. Because what it's doing is it's going out, it's searching a range of sources, it's providing you the answer you seek, hopefully with sources, and hopefully you check those sources, because we all know the danger of not doing so. So I think getting access to an internet's worth of data immediately and having, I don't want to say having the thinking done for you, because obviously that's an incredibly dangerous thing to say, but having some of the legwork done around checking all of the different sources if you want to compare things, the time saving there is incredible. So, it's anyone who's had to research something in the last 12 months has probably asked that question of ChatGPT or of Copilot or of Claude. And the way that it can bring that information to you in a clearly structured format gives you the ability to go drill down to a source to find more information. I think that's incredible, and it's powerful, and it saves people time. Every day it saves me time doing things like that. The other thing that I really like is experimenting with creating very simple AI agents as a way to challenge your thinking. So this is something that I often will do at work as well. I'll just play around with a Copilot Studio or something like that, and I'll ask the model to take on a particular persona, be it someone who's you're a person who's the devil's advocate. Whatever I say, you're going to try to unpack my idea and challenge me, like ask me to justify it. Or maybe it's something that tests your idea against company values, or maybe it tests it against legal requirements or statutory requirements or whatever it might be. It's just a sounding board. It can take on the role of an expert, not replace experts, but just for quick stress testing of ideas as well. I think that's a really quick and easy win that people can implement.
Play and have fun.
Yeah, very
see
much
what
so.
happens. If people can in the future, soon, query, I think Snowflake has a tool that can do this, but query a data set with natural language, where does the role of the data analyst or BI analyst lead to now?
Yeah, so I've played around with that particular feature you mentioned in Snowflake, and it's great, but I think the challenge always with structured data is the weakness of any generative AI model is its ability to understand. Like, it mimics human intelligence, but it doesn't understand the way that humans do. So it'll look at a structured data set, it'll do its best to interpret that data set, but without that semantic layer sitting in the middle, which is effectively labeling your data and telling the model what each piece of data, what each column means, you'll often find it won't perform very well. So the good thing about Snowflake, this tool, is the model, the data engineer, or that probably the analyst, because they sort of sit between the data engineer and the business. They have the technical chops, but also actually understand the data, the domain. They have to build that semantic model manually. So effectively, they are joining the tables into a star schema like you would in the database. You're manually defining calculations because that's the most reliable way to do it. And then you're telling the model what does each column represent to the business. So you give it aliases that you might expect a business user to use, or you say this is machine ID, this is the serial number for a machine, or whatever it might be. So without that layer, models right now don't perform very well on data analysis. But with that layer, I think it really does unlock new possibilities. Like, one of the things that I'm quite excited about with that tech is you can expose those semantic models built in Snowflake or any other data platform. I'm agnostic. You can expose those to agent or agentic workflows, which can then be brought into the existing workflows of your non-technical users. So say you've done all this data modeling work in Snowflake, you've built out your semantic layer, which has all the calculations you might expect a senior exec to want to know, all the metrics and KPIs. If you expose that or connect that to like a Copilot agent, they can be talking to their Microsoft Copilot, ask for the latest EBIT from May or whatever it is, and it will go query that Snowflake semantic model and return that in their Copilot workflow, which is what they used to. So you're not constantly expecting people to switch context, go look at a report. And I think people often over talk about the death of the dashboard. I think if there's one thing that might kill off the dashboard, it's bringing that information into a workflow that is more comfortable for an executive like Copilot or something like that.
And they get used to Copilot as it integrates better.
Exactly.
And then suddenly you're getting your day plan there.
Yep.
And the EBIT figures as well.
That's it. And it's all been vetted by your centralized data and analytics team because it's built on top of golden model data. It's been kind of defined as a semantic model, and then those calculations have been concretely written down, defined, and then it's being brought through the right tech. So could be huge, will be huge.
And if we go back, if you were starting your career now, age of data and AI, what would you be focusing on in order to be where you are now in 10 years, let's say?
I still think that the best thing that any aspiring analyst or data professional can do is just be a sponge. Every data leader will tell you, be curious, that sort of thing. But it is so important and so true. I think asking questions and taking that information on board will just ensure that you can be the most effective person that you can be. I think centralized data teams are so uniquely positioned to develop a really good holistic understanding of how a business operates, because they sort of occupy, unless you're a decentralized analyst embedded in a particular team, if you're part of a centralized function, you sort of occupy this position where you have like a thin horizontal slice across the whole business. So you see a little bit of what everyone else does. And that positions you to put that all together and generate such a good understanding of how things interrelate. What lever do I pull to impact something over here? So I think asking questions, being a sponge, soaking it all in. Don't focus too much on learning all the tools. This is something that I'm sure everyone who comes on your podcast has talked about this. But during COVID, the number of boot camps that I saw pop up that were like, master Python, Power BI, and one other thing, and you'll get a job as a data analyst. And I'm sure people did that, and I'm sure that they were disappointed because it's not how it works. There are so many people out there looking for jobs who have the technical skills, because those are the easy things to learn. Everything's difficult, but those are. It's easier to get experience with technical tools than it is to get experience with real world problems and real people who are having those problems, businesses. So I think if you're lucky enough to be around people who are in business, ask them questions. Ask them about the kinds of challenges that they face every day. Try to find out what kinds of data they deal with, what are the systems they use to produce in terms of data, and then try and do some projects. You're obviously going to struggle to get access to real business data if you're not working in a business, but I think the number of people who have come across from business roles into data teams and just been super effective because you have that existing context, it's something that I definitely, in my hiring, have always favored, is people who have experience in business. And it's because they generally know the right questions to ask. They know the pain points. They have a really good understanding of how to approach certain situations. Whereas if you're focused heavily on just the technical, I think you struggle to really have the appreciation of what any given solution might require.
What comes up there for me is, one, a lot of CVs I see have Power BI, SQL, and Python experience.
Yeah.
And it's almost to the point where, and this may not sound great, where it's not a differentiator, it's just a requirement.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is there's the two types of learning. There's more, for lack of a better word, tangible learning, which is a certificate, a course, and there's intangible, things that can't be duplicated. So meeting with your brother-in-law who happens to run a business and going, what metrics do you look at? Can I do a little dashboard for you as well?
Yeah.
Or it's speaking with a mentor as well about what they think is important, or listening to a podcast. I'd put that in there as well.
Yeah.
Tangible is very easy for everyone. It's very accessible. It can take time, but it's very accessible, like a Databricks free cert.
Yeah.
Intangible is harder to see, but also harder to gain as well.
Yeah.
How do people get the intangible, do you think?
I think mentorship, you mentioned that word, so incredibly valuable. I would desperately ask people who are lucky enough to have positions in data teams to offer your services as mentors. In previous roles, I've tried to get mentor programs off the ground and set up communities of practice. I think that knowledge sharing, it really falls on the people who have experience in the field to try and bring everybody else up along with him because of how hard it can be to break into this field. That's why I have so much respect for the work you've done around building the data community in Perth. I think it's been an absolute game changer for people who are trying to break into this industry, and something I've tried to do on a much smaller scale at the places I've worked. So I think try to find a mentor, and whether that's a formal thing or it's just approach some people on LinkedIn or whatever. Just ask questions. Don't have any expectations about answers because everybody's busy. But to those who receive the questions, if you can answer even 1 out of 10, you're doing a great thing. So just try to absorb knowledge, but it doesn't just have to be from a data professional either. It can be just from someone who works in business, who has exposure to the kinds of problems that you see every day. Like, everyone knows somebody who works at a company that has problems. Just try to learn by osmosis. And if you're lucky enough to be able to do projects for somebody that definitely do them. But I think creating those relationships, attend industry Interjoin. Absolutely. Yeah, huge event. I think that's the way to do it. It feels a little bit old school. I'm not saying go drop your CV at every place in town, like many of the older generation would say, but the personal relationships that you can have with people really do open doors. Even if it's not for an actual job, just the knowledge transfer that can occur.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that's where jobs and that's where opportunities are found. The challenge is it's not as appetizing because it's not as linear. As there's 40 jobs posted for a data analyst. I'm going to apply to them all and wait. It's more. Yeah.
The other thing I would heavily recommend is if you are coming from through the university pathway. I know all 3 of the major unis. I think if not, I'm not sure about UWA, but they offer the work integrated learning programs as well. Have been lucky enough to work with many students that have come through those programs. And I've also been lucky enough to offer them permanent roles in other places I've worked. So the quality of people that you get through these programs, some of the smartest people that I've ever met, and it's win-win because they come and get real world experience, exposure to data, business problems, and as a business leader, you get help. You get the next generation of people coming through, solving problems, bringing a fresh perspective, a diverse perspective, and they're actually doing great work as well. So it really is a win-win.
I had 7 or 8 minutes left. I took on a few data analysts for a little bit, and that was through ECU's work integrated learning plan. Yep. And I led that a little bit, but I think they got a lot of experience just from seeing what is the problem that we have as a business recruitment agency. Yep. And that was understanding the job market and the public data out there and putting that into a dashboard.
I think as well, there are probably events that happen around Perth as well, where it would benefit prospective people looking for jobs to attend. So, I know Microsoft often hosts data and AI events, agentic AI hackathons, things like that. The people that you'll meet through those, I think, would be invaluable connections as well. So, again, win-win. Like, you get some skills, you get to hear about the latest tech, but you'll also probably be sitting on the same table as someone who works for business, is looking at upskilling. And, if you show that you have an aptitude for something, you might stick in their mind.
Absolutely. You've hired in the past for the WestTrack team and maybe RGO team in the future, or have. What key traits do you look for when hiring someone for specifically data analytics, AI, data science?
Yeah, for me, there's a baseline level of technical that you want, but for me, that's much less important than what I'm really interested in, which is just the way that people think about problem solving. It'll often happen that I'll be in an interview with someone and I'll ask them some technical questions, no problem. But as soon as I ask them something similar to what we talked about before, I'll say, you walk into a room, you're dealing with a person from the business that has 25 years of experience. What are you going to do? And they just freeze. They don't really understand how to approach that situation because it's out of their comfort zone. So I think somebody who's not afraid to look stupid, we all do at some point in time. Like, there's no such thing as stupid questions. I like people who ask questions. The more questions, the better, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And I think it can be really clear from how someone comes across in an interview, how they would go walking into a room of senior execs or business specialists or whatever, how they're going to, you don't have to control the room, but just have that ability to ask the second and third questions to really get to the heart of a problem, not just what that person is saying that they want, but what is the core issue that's happening here, and what can you bring to that situation that somebody else couldn't. So I think it's that ability to ask questions, be a sponge, always learn. I think that's what sets people apart in this industry because they just get better and better and better. I had a previous manager who always used to say to me, I would rather have somebody for 1 year that outgrows this role than somebody for 8 years that just never progresses. And I completely agree with that.
It's intangible. It's hard for people to grasp that. Like, I'm a junior data analyst. I want to get into the industry. How do I become more curious?
Yeah.
How do I listen? Do I go meditate or read some philosophy?
I think I don't know what literature is out there around asking questions, but I know that there's this concept around like digging deeper. There's concepts like the second and third questions or the 5 whys. I think it's just learning to not accept something at face value. And that's why I think, as an analyst, you're going to have these moments, particularly as a junior analyst, where you're looking through a data set and you find something and you're like, hallelujah, like I've revolutionized the world of business with this insight that I've just unpacked. And you go present that to your boss and they're like, oh, that, our database went down that day or something. Yeah, and it falls flat. So I think being critical of everything that you see, challenging and trying to look at it from different angles, I think that's how you can start to develop that worldview.
Going to the future, where are you placing bets on technology and data and AI? Have you got any hunches whether we'll have distributed data teams or perhaps every person will have an agent with supporting their job? What do you think is going to be happening?
I don't think AI is going anywhere, but it'll be really interesting to see where the race goes because so much money is being poured into developing better and better AI models. But yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert, but to me, it seems like we've run out of data to train them on. And if we're just now using AI to create data, how do you get around the issue of model collapse? I'm sure they're going to figure it out. But at some point, the benefits of getting better and better models, assuming we never achieve AGI, which I don't think we will, we're better off focusing on how we can make these AI models better serve us. You can have the best model in the world, but if we don't, as organizations, ever work out how to make them work for us as people, then really it's money for nothing. It doesn't benefit us as people. So I would say integrating AI better with our current workflows is going to be key. So I sort of touched on that a little bit before about if you bring information to people's existing workflows, such as senior execs, they're more likely to use it. So focusing on adoption. Once we're done with solving the technology side of AI, we come back to the thing that was always the problem for businesses, which is people and process. So how we integrate that technology with the people and process better. I don't know if that'll ever be a solved problem, but if we can do better at that, then I think, the sky will be the limit.
It makes me think about RPA, robotic process automation, was popular 10 years ago.
Yeah.
5 years ago, it was data science in the large corporates.
I think AI will come back down to earth and be seen as another tool in the technologist's arsenal. So RPA and data science or traditional ML aren't going anywhere because they still have their role to play in the toolkit. RPA for replacing human input. It's not something that AI probably is going to be able to do because it's not deterministic in the way that RPA is. I read this great article the other day that talked about how one of the key differences around traditional ML and generative AI is that machine learning, because it's more about prediction, is about making better decisions, whereas generative AI is more about making faster decisions. And I think that's an interesting framework to apply. So depending on what you're trying to achieve in a given problem, each of these technology solutions will have some role to play. And not everything is an AI-shaped problem.
I think understanding where it's good to be used, or where a Power BI dashboard is going to be just as useful.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you can solve 98% of a problem for $100 or 99% of it for $1 million, what's the right answer for your business? It depends.
Depends. Consulting answer. Andy, last bit just about you. Any books you're reading? Any rides you've got planned? Big ones? Anything that people should know about you on the personal side?
I'm slowly making my way through the Business Wars book, which is a book from the podcast. I read maybe a chapter every few months when I get time. I've got a 4-year-old that I chase around everywhere. Trying to build towards a gravel ride in May, which I really haven't done any big rides since my son was born 4 years ago. So trying to slowly get some fitness back, and then trying to slowly learn how to play golf, which it's not going well. I was obsessed with it as a kid. So the only remnant of that is I have a great looking golf swing, but everything else is disastrous.
I've never heard anyone enjoying a golf game yet.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
I think if you play one good shot, and 10 bad, that one good shot keeps you coming back.
Yeah. Jeez. Mate, that's incredible. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And again, thanks for everything you do for the data community in Perth, Douglas. Great man.
We'll keep it growing. Andy Maher, Manager, Digital and Data.